Stay alive. No matter where you go, no matter who has you, stay alive. Something to that effect. I don't remember the exact line now. I love this movie. I love Hawkeye. If you've never seen The Last of Mohicans, it is set in the French and Indian War. Uh, the main character is called Hawkeye. He is we would call him a mountain man. Back then, he was a long hunter, uh, a frontiersman in the 1700s that went hunting for furs in the Appalachian Mountains and the Ohio River Valley. Uh, America at this time is a complex weaving of French and British territories, and native tribes and the Spanish are still there. A bunch of other people are trying to get claims there too. To be honest, at the same time, like those are the primary players. But I find North America in this time fascinating. The pre-Revolutionary War colonial era is the stuff that I'm personally really into. Uh, I would love to just go travel back east and see some of these places uh, up close, but like that would mean going to the land of the heathen, so probably not going to do that. I've seen a few of them. I've been to DC and Baltimore, and I've been to Norfolk and Atlanta, Florida, a bunch of other places on the East Coast, but there's a bunch of like the Ohio River Valley in particular that I might go see. Some of those states aren't too bad, but like I'd love to see Maine and Massachusetts and Boston and shit like that, but I couldn't imagine actually going there, and that saddens me. Last of the Mohicans takes place in upstate New York. Basically, it's a engagement between the French and the British uh, regarding some forts in upstate New York, just outside Albany, if I remember right. And it's a cool place, cool terrain and shit like that. The filming that they did in this movie is gorgeous. It's beautiful eastern woodlands. I'm not sure exactly where they filmed it. Probably in some national forests or some shit. But it is a perfect example of what a movie should be. It's well written, it's well made. There's maybe a pick or two here or there you could make about historical accuracy. Uh, but I think a lot of that is because this was the first American novel that's written by James Fenimore Cooper, and some of those historical inaccuracies or whatever that you would criticize are things that are definitely a part of this being an American novel and written from the American point of view and like how they would have wanted things to be, you know. So the characters voice some opinions in, the 1750s that not many people had in the 1750s. Uh, and like that's not entirely accurate. I think in reality, everyone on the frontier felt the way that this was depicted, and it really was this long burning fucking thing of we don't even want the English here. We can do our own thing here. Like not everyone felt that way, but like especially the frontiersmen that they're depicting in this movie. Yeah, I think they probably did feel that way. Those were the people that got upset and did the revolution in the first place. I mean, most of the people who did the fighting in that war were, either idealistic young people from the cities or battle hardened veterans from the frontier. Between Indian fighting and the French and Indian War, there was plenty of them to, be found. And for whatever reason, back in the day, people didn't stop fighting when they got old. I think that's kind of interesting. I think this is a rabbit hole that we could totally go down, but maybe a separate video for another day or something. But uh, why is it that there were like warrior grandfathers and shit in years past, but there aren't now? And I think part of it is activity level, and part of it is our diet. Our diets are like total shit. Our activity level is like zero. So that really, it's not that surprising. Anyway, Last of the Mohicans. The guns in this movie are all Kentucky long rifles and brown Besses and musket pistols and shit like that. And they're some of my favorite guns of all time. If you've never been interested in, 16, 1700s history, then you might not get why these are some of my favorite guns of all time. But like, these are the guns that created America. The musket and the Kentucky long rifle in particular. There would not be an America without those two guns. And I've owned a brown Bess or two, and I've never owned a Kentucky long rifle. I would like to, but the thing is, the ones I would like to own are like handmade by some dude in like the backwoods of Tennessee somewhere that like has a passion for these. And maybe someday I'll order one of those. That's after I have land and a lot of other shit. Maybe then I'll have $6,000 to dump on a black powder rifle. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I might just go get like the cheapest Kentucky rifle I can and make it pimping myself. That might be cool. But actually, that sounds really fun. We're definitely gonna do that. I love The Last of the Mohicans because of like the warrior poet romantic ethos that is espoused in this movie. Like, I love John Lovell, Warrior Poet Society. We've spoken many times. My favorite one was I had someone was telling me that he he was a Satanist, and like all of his shit was Satan, and like explained how everything he did was Satan, and I was just like, oh my god! And I sent him the video to it, and just was like, just so you know, apparently you're the devil. And we just laughed back and forth about that for like an hour, just texted back and forth on fucking Instagram. But the reason I like John Lovell and Warrior Poet Society is because he chose the name Warrior Poet Society. And like, this is one of those movies, like the other one I would bring up is Braveheart, that just espouses the warrior poet to me. Hawkeye in this movie is the warrior poet. He can do both. He can love and fight, and he's this rare mix of everything a man should be, everything that you should want to be. Like, there's not that many depictions of it that are quite this good, in my opinion. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. The tomahawk action. I almost forgot about tomahawks. This era in particular was the era of the tomahawk. The tomahawk and the Kentucky long rifle go together like peanut butter and jelly. Like, I love tomahawks. It is a very effective weapon. Matt has the one I made. I've made a few different like odd weapons that I just I wanted to make my own version of it just to say I did, and I kind of give them away or sell them. And that's half of my thing is, if I make a really really nice thing and sell it to someone for a good price, it's probably going to like live in their family forever, and they'll always remember the person that made it. And I think that's kind of cool. And the tomahawks back in the day were usually made by the guys that carried them. At least in the Native American shit, like they started trading tomahawk heads to the natives, little axe heads and shit, because they were a common, valuable thing. Like you can make your own wood handle, yada yada yada. We're shipping all this stuff over from England. We'll ship over barrels and barrels of axe heads. That's what they did, and the natives already made a weapon that was called a tomahawk that was made of stone and like a sapling bent around it. And it was a war club. And the second they saw these lax heads that the English were trading, those became the new tomahawks because now you have a steel one and it can do multiple things. And the tomahawk is like this weapon tool thing that you can like, you could carve shit with it, you can chop shit with it. Like if you had one woods tool, if you had the appropriately sized tomahawk, it wouldn't be the worst thing. There's way worse options. And this is another one of those movies too that depicts, mountain men and the wilderness and lots of this stuff like I was talking about in Jeremiah Johnson. That I personally like these movies. Most of the movies I'm going to do videos on are going to be like this. Um, the other cool aspect of this is you do get to see a lot of 1700s British and French military shit, which is always cool in these movies. For me, that like Napoleonic, well, like Revolutionary War to Napoleon, well, even earlier than that, like French and Indian War to Napoleonic War era of combat is fascinating. And there's other movies that show this era too, but this is one of the better ones. And it's like the only one that does the French and the Indian War. And the French and the Indian War is one of those things that, fucking cat, I think everyone should know about. Basically, that conflict completely informed what the Revolutionary War was to become. George Washington was like I don't know if he was actually a lieutenant. He was commanding some sort of like militia regiment or something like that in the French and Indian War for Virginia. And that's where he got all of his military experience. That's where most of the guys that fought in the Revolutionary War got their military experience. And it's a war that most Americans don't know enough about. In Europe, it was called the 7 Years' War. And I think it's interesting that it's a war with two names. And it was, a lot of people would say that this was the First World War. And I would agree with that. France and England fought this war on almost every continent. Like, they were, every continent they were in, at least, that they were in North America, Europe, and Africa, both. Maybe they weren't in Africa yet. I think they were though. That may have come later. To be truthful, everything I know about Africa comes from my love of safaris and the 1800s and shit like that. Like we'll do movies on a movie about that in the future. Ghost in the Darkness. I definitely want to do that movie. I get really easily distracted, but I think it makes this show kind of fun. Back to Last of the Mohicans. The coolest part about Last of the Mohicans, in my opinion, is the level of attention to detail done in the costuming, especially of the Native Americans and the Long Hunters. They got some shit right. Like, I think they hired reenactors, and this is one of many movies that, like, when they want to do a historical period, the first thing they go out and do is talk to the reenacting community that does that period and see how many volunteers they can get to make the movie better. I think it was Gettysburg did this, and Waterloo did this. It would not surprise me to know that there are French and Indian War reenactors in this movie. I guarantee it because of how it looked. Like there's, I'm looking at a picture of Hawkeye right now on my TV, and he's wearing a sash strap across his chest that is porcupine quill work, and well done at that. It's not every movie about Native Americans would even know to include that as like a thing that was done. Like they're carrying gunstock war clubs. The Huron look Huron. The Mohawk look Mohawk. Everything about this movie from a native perspective is correct. And I find that cool too. I'm an anthropology nerd. I think this movie depicts native peoples very well. I think fucking Magua. We're 15 minutes in. We haven't even talked about Magua yet. Magua is the villain of the movie, and he is played by, I forget his name. He's a Native American actor that has played the bad Native American guy in every fucking movie that you can imagine. I, if you see him, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. But he is a great actor, and in this movie in particular, he steals the show from Daniel Day-Lewis, which is hard to do. Uh, Magua explains why he hates the English, and as he calls them, the gray hair, which is the colonel that's leading a fort in this movie. Basically, the colonel burned out his people and, made him a slave to the Mohawk and like killed his children and not killed his children. His wife left him for another man because he was captured and shit like that, and basically just blames this dude for his entire like downfall of his life and wants to see him die after watching his children die. And he explains all of this in this like monologue that, he's speaking as Magua, which Magua talks a bit like this, very monotone, and says shit that's like, he will fall under Magua's knife. The gray hair's children will die at the hands at the hands of Magua's knife, whatever, like that kind of shit. I'm doing a bad job of it, but you get what I'm saying. He has this like delivery that is crazy. There's a British major in this that is basically his romantic enemy in the movie, I guess. He's a complete and total tool, and I'm not going to tell you what happens to him, but he gets his comeuppance. In general, I think the British military is quite accurately portrayed in film. I don't like them. Fuck England. The only time I don't say fuck England is when there's other people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like the English for all the same reasons that the fucking founding fathers didn't like the English. But when it comes to the English versus the Russians and the Germans and shit, well, I guess the English are our friends technically, but they still suck. Fucking redcoats. Other cool shit in this movie. The gunstock war clubs. They use gunstock war clubs because this is in like the New York to Great Lakes region where there's Huron, and that's kind of a Huron thing if I remember right. There's a few other tribes in this era in that region that use them too. But it's a very cool melee weapon that is its own thing of this era, that basically it's a rifle without a barrel, and it has like a blade on it, and it's made of like the hardest, densest wood that they can find, and they just beat people to death with it. And like, it's cool. Is it the best weapon to carry? No. It's kind of like a gaffy stick, but for like North American Indians or some shit. Like, I don't fully understand why they carry it when they have a long rifle that also beats people to death with. Which, if you watch Jeremiah Johnson, you've seen plenty of. This is the thing I think a lot of people don't realize about combat pre-repeating firearms is that there was a lot of shot melee, and I think the realities of modern combat might be such that there's going to be melee again at some point. That's one of the things that like I'm currently worried about and trying to figure out for myself and how I want to do that. And watching these movies is just making me think even more about how we need fucking melee weapons for the zombie apocalypse. Maybe we'll do some zombie movies at some point too. I don't know. There's not that many zombie movies I actually like. Part of it. Back to Last of the Mohicans. The scene under the waterfall between Hawkeye and the brunette hot chick that he's fucking talking to. I honestly forget her name right now. I'm really horrible about like names of characters in movies. Like I'd rather remember the actors' names usually. And like I'm for some reason I'm a lot more likely to remember guys' names than chicks' names for whatever reason that might be. Especially when they're, tall, dark and handsome and carrying a Kentucky long rifle and telling you how they'll come for you no matter what. It's like possibly one of the most romantic scenes in film. This movie is a total romance chick flick, by the way. This long into that, it's like a French and Indian War romance novel chick flick. Uh, that is amazing. Most people think this is one of the best movies ever made, and men and women, for whatever reason, always usually agree on this movie. There's a bunch of movies that like men and women agree on. Don't get me wrong, but like if you just polled men and women on this movie in particular, I think you'd find most people love it, and it's a rare thing. Um, I hope you can enjoy a good romantic movie. Um, it is kind of one of those like they you know fall in love at the drop of a hat or whatever. But when he saves you from being scalped by a Huron war party, I guess your skirt starts dropping real fast. Well, I hope you guys liked this. That's about all I have to say about The Last of the Mohicans. It's a great movie. You should definitely go watch it. Um, and I would learn more about the history period too, like of any of these movies that are historical that you like enjoy the movie, love the movie, and then start like nerding out over the books and everything else to do with that history period. Look it up on YouTube. You'll probably find videos on it. This is the kind of shit that interests me, and I hope it does you too. Thanks for watching.